I'm Blake Bowman. I am basically, I guess the way I would describe us is I don't look at us necessarily as advocates, but more as people who empower people, and especially the neurodiversity mind.
I've been working with Blake for a couple of years now, and I just absolutely love helping young adults, improve their independent skills, neurodiversity, whether it's autism, ADHD, dyslexia, others. They're all just natural variations of a human brain.
Hello, this is Rita, and this is me and my mommy's podcast, and then my mommy, and there's me, and I'm just talking about this stuff, and there's me tap dancing, because this is a tap dancing slash autism podcast, and there's a bunch of animals, and I'll be trying to eat my hair, and there's a bunch of sand in the ocean. Also, there's all the soul talk stuff, I love all my ninjas and babes. Oh, that, and also, yes, like life stuff and tap dancing. Oh, and also there's my boots. My boots are amazing. Also, there's me, trying not to have a panic attack. Also, this is a podcast about me, autism, and tap dancing, and blah, blah, blah. I'm just ADHD in this thing. Also, there's my cute adorable puppies. Okay. I am me. That's my mom. These are two people. This is Jack. You'll just be seeing his face for the whole time.
So if you're watching on YouTube, I guess you're seeing the pit bull on the video the whole time because the teenager just loves her dog to death. Hi, Blake. Hi, Pickens. Thank you guys so much for joining us today on Lita's Tap Styles and My Autistic Life. Let's see if I can talk today. I am terrible at introducing our guests. When I introduce our guests, I sound like a robot. Do you two mind introducing yourselves?
Not at all. And I just want to tell you, we are just thrilled to be on, and we love Lita and the pit. And so we're here doing this. So I'm Blake Bowman. I am basically, I guess the way I would describe us is I don't look at us necessarily as advocates, but more as people who empower people, and especially the neurodiversity mind. And so currently I am the owner and founder of a couple of companies. One is Aspire Autism Coaching, and it's a play on words, so it's not your typical spelling. And then the second one is a new venture that Pickens and I are doing, and it's called the Autism Independence Academy. And it's something that is really dedicated on helping both parents, teens, and young adults on their independence journey, whatever that may look at. And so that's kind of a little bit about me, I guess, is I am on the spectrum myself. I have 4 neurodivergent, I think Amanda's contagious, neurodivergent children, and they're all young adults now between the ages of 20 and 26, from everything from ADHD and dyslexia to autism and some social anxiety disorders. And so I guess that's a little bit about me. And so Pickens, I'll throw it your way.
Thanks, Blake. So my story, it's a little same, a little different. Just like Blake, I have a family that's just full of neurodivergence. And so it's something that I've always been passionate about, throughout my whole life. And my journey started a little different. I was doing a lot of finance, accounting type work, and I really wanted to change. And so that's where Blake really came in at the perfect time. And I've been working with Blake for a couple of years now, and I just absolutely love helping young adults, improve their independent skills. And for me, especially, I love working on things like career as well as things like social skills, because, especially we might find in this conversation, I love talking. It is one of my favorite things. I would talk to a brick wall if it answered back.
That is what got me labeled as ADHD back in the 90s, was I talked too much.
Yeah.
And girls have a specific number of words, I guess we're allowed to say before it's, you're ADHD.
That's funny.
When we had you guys on for the pre-interview, I love what you guys are doing at Aspire. The idea of coaching these kids. A lot of these therapies aren't hitting on how to launch, but they all disappear at 18 or 21, depending on where you live. And there's no safety net. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the program and what it does.
Absolutely. One of the things that we've done is we've actually got our coaching process trademarked, and it's called the Ideal Launch System. And so the I stands for identity, Amanda. And what we have found is that when we start working with young adults and teens, essentially many of them are stuck because they have fear, they've been traumatized, they've been bullied, and they have a low self-esteem about themselves. And so first part, what we really try to do is we try to establish this new identity with them. And you think of an identity as like a thermostat. You know, if the thermostat is set to 75 degrees, what happens when it gets 77, 78? The air comes on, it cools it back down. Many times what we're trying to ask our kids to do is to get into jobs or to go to college or do these things. And if their identity doesn't match up, it's like we're putting them in a room with 78 degrees, and then their identity kind of kicks in, lowers it, and it leads to them making mistakes and being more self-critical and actually going backwards. And so the very first thing that we do is we work on that. The second thing is the D stands for direction. And essentially, this is helping them build out like a compelling future, something that excites them. See, many times, Amanda, and I don't know if you've ever fallen into this trap before. I, as a parent, definitely have fallen into this trap. We have an idea of what we want for our kids' future, but we don't stop to ask our kids, what do you want for your future? And their happiness is going to look a lot different. I'll give you an example. My eldest is 26 right now, and his ideal life, he's living it. He has a 9-to-5 job, but he comes home and he gets to play D&D twice a week. And then he chills out doing, gaming on the weekends, and then he goes back and works, and he's living a life where he's self-sustainable and he's just enjoying it. And that's his ideal life. That's not what I would have necessarily picked out for him, right? And so when we can help them kind of tap into what excites them and the direction they're going, then usually you get them moving. And then once you get them moving, that's where this thing called the E, the executive functioning skills, come in. And for many of us, I call those our adult skills. And essentially, time management, planning, organization, task initiation, task completion, those are the things that are going to help us. And so what we do is we look to find any gaps in those areas and help put new strategies and tools based on their identity and strengths to get them to execute that. After that, you have the A. A stands for action. You can't accomplish anything without the action. And so we have a unique perspective of looking at micro actions as the key. And so there was a saying, and Pickens, correct me if I'm wrong, was it Warren Buffett who said the eighth wonder of the world is compounding interest?
As you're asking me the question, I'm doubting myself because I want to agree, but I might be wrong.
Well, we may be wrong, but somebody said the eighth wonder of the world is compounding interest. And when you take that and you look at it, Amanda, from an action standpoint, imagine if your teen or young adult could just improve themselves by 1% a day. That's not very much. And what happens is if you do this every day for a year, most people think you're going to improve by 365%. When in reality, your improvement is on your improvement, which is on the improvement from the day before. So it compounds and it's massive. It's like 3,778%. And so once you get them moving consistently, then you look at the L, which is the life skills. And these are the areas like financial or money management, career, household management, things of that nature. And this kind of all flows naturally. And when we've done this coaching process, many of the young adults achieve success much faster than the pace they were on. And it's something that definitely gets them moving forward for sure.
Go ahead, Pickens.
My apologies. I actually looked it up, and the reason I wanted to bring it up is because this is somebody else who there's been certainly a lot of speculation on whether or not they also are on the spectrum. That quote is not Warren Buffett, it's Albert Einstein.
Einstein,
so,
okay.
Even better.
There you go.
I mean, if you look at some of the historical doctors he was going to in Germany, they were the autistic doctors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I heard an incredible story the other day about the past. So if and I just want to make sure for Lita's purpose, if she has questions, she asking a question or she's just excited. I just want to make sure I'm honoring that.
She's complaining because the puppy just went upstairs.
Oh, my goodness. Lita, why'd that happen?
I would be complaining too.
Absolutely. So you're speaking about, go ahead.
I think he's like, the couch is not big enough. I need to go find a more comfy spot.
Yeah. I heard an incredible story about Michelangelo, and Michelangelo is thought to be on the spectrum as well. And what he used to do when he was a teenager, because he wanted to get a feel for art, he would actually sneak into the morgue and do autopsies on bodies himself and be able to play with the organs and hold them so that when he would go build like the statue of David, he was getting everything atomically correct. And it's just fascinating because most people would think, especially neurotypicals, that's not what you do. For Michelangelo, he wanted to get inside the people to get inside the characters and the art he was making. It's just fascinating how the brain works.
She's like, wait, I didn't know. Yeah, Michelangelo used to just go do all that. I mean,
When he was a teenager,
obviously,
yep.
Very illegal. You can put that into your microphone. It is a podcast. You can talk.
How he not go to prison?
So if he would have got caught, he definitely would have gone to prison. And there's a chance at that time that he would have gotten the death penalty, so to speak.
Yes, you know he's not sane in the head at that point. You know he's not sane.
He just had a way of wanting to really build art, and he wanted to know it inside and out.
The amount of autistic and ADHD and non-neurotypical people in the world, I know we've had some younger parents come up to us going, I wish my child was neurotypical because I want them to grow up like Bill Gates, like Steve Jobs, like Elon Musk. And I'm sitting there going, neurotypical? Those guys are not neurotypical.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny because the statistics, the latest statistics were 20% of the population is neurodivergent. And so that's 1 in 5 people that we all run into. And it's funny because Pickens and I were actually talking to a young adult the other day who he's on the spectrum, but he sees it as a negative. And we were actually, I said, tell me some of the names that you recognize. And he started naming off names like, Jerry Seinfeld and who was one of the others? It was
definitely talked about Musk. That was one of them.
Musk, Jim Carrey, Justin Timberlake, and some of these individuals are all neurodivergent. And, it was really helping him see. And I said, look, if you go back in history and you look at all the people that changed the world, they all thought differently. They were all wired differently. And you could pretty much nail them down to being neurodivergent in some form or fashion.
I like to, and we've gotten down a bunny trail, but I think this one's an important one. Way back when, and she's yelling at the dog because he's not where she wants him.
No.
It is going to get picked up in my microphone that you're yelling at him. She's like, whatever. Sir Crichton, who was one of King George III's doctors, was the first person to use the term attention deficit disorder.
Okay. That is, wow, that's historic there.
So and he did it prior to assigning the U.S. Constitution.
Yeah.
And so when people are like, ADHD is new, I'm like, I could get the Europeans saying that, but you're in America.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is really new here?
We see new as a little different. I mean, we did not have a president before we had the term attention deficit disorder. So, but yeah, that identity, because I know Lita, one of the reasons we pulled her out of traditional dance studios was because of I still think it was unintentional bullying. She has a difference of opinion. She's giving me a look because of that difference.
I see it. I see
yeah, we see that.
But it has really given her imposter syndrome where she's like, do you think you're good enough? You want to say that into a microphone? Shaking her head, no, this is working well. But that is such an important part for a lot of those neurotypical kids. They've been built up. They've been told that they're fine. I know even me, we were discussing this again before we jumped on the interview. A lot of my therapist as a young child, it was, you need to change to fit into this world. You're not good enough. And even my 40s, that still stings a lot and is always in the back of my mind.
Yeah, the identity, when we see most coaches and most therapists, they immediately go to focus on strategy. And even with like cognitive behavior therapy of looking at things a little bit differently, but we're never looking at the what we call as the framework. So we're looking at the belief system. We're looking at their intrinsic motivators. We're looking at basically the rules that they've established for success. And many times these rules are developed to protect ourselves and sometimes govern ourselves. But if you have, like Lita in your case, if you created a rule because people were being mean to you and you hold on to that rule and it's not helping you, you're going to stay stuck. So you have to change that rule. And part of that sometimes is understanding that not everybody is a bad person. Just you ran into a bad person, but not everybody is a bad person. And just knowing that and giving somebody new an opportunity to be around can sometimes free people. I had a client one time that was abused as a child and was basically tormented in school, and he was very stuck, suicidal ideations and things of that nature. And when we started looking at the rules that he formed all people are evil, all people are here to harm me. And because of that, he would never leave his apartment. He would stay in his room playing on video games and keeping to himself. And what we were able to do is we were able to help him shift some of these rules around, some of these beliefs about himself, because he believed he deserved all this bad stuff happening to him and he wasn't good enough. And so once we got modifying these beliefs and modifying these rules, one of the things we did is we took him to a volunteer opportunity and he got to see some really good people. And from there, it led into him getting out of his apartment and just going down to the pool and just sitting there. And people would actually came up to him and he made two friends really quickly. Then from there, it spawned to him actually getting a part-time job and then actually gaining a girlfriend in his case. And he's completely transformed because he realized that all people aren't evil. He just had the one or two people that were in his life that did these things to him. And once he freed himself of that, he was able to move forward. Now, it was a process, but it was a process that freed him up.
And it's an important process that I don't think enough people understand. You do have to kind of deal with that trauma, because a lot of people are like, well, it wasn't necessarily trauma. The thing I'm often told is, oh, that was just the best therapeutic practices of the time. And I'm like, but those were traumatic for those of us who went through it. And you kind of have to deal with that and it was what they were taught. But it also doesn't mean that the rest of she's like, who cares? It was still wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Definitely.
Yeah. And,
she's a little, oh, go ahead, Pickens.
No worries. All I was going to say, if there's anything that I could really if we're talking about neurotypicals, and if there's anything that I would like to teach the world of, NTs out there, it's that to me, I feel like, neurodiversity, whether it's, autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and others, they're all just natural variations of a human brain. And, I think a lot of people misperceive them as like deficits. But I think really when you get down to the core, it's about seeing those differences as part of any other, normal human diversity, and not something to be like pathologized, because that's where I think it really got, taken the wrong way, especially with what you're talking about back in the day. Many families, I think, watch their children struggle, and it's not because they're incapable. It's that the world doesn't understand their wiring. And when you shift the focus and understand the wiring and understand, with respect and how much, possibility there really is with every individual, no matter what the differences are, I think everything changes. That shift is really kind of the core of the work that we do. But I do truly wish it would be something that, everybody understood and not just perhaps us.
It seems to be the neurodivergent world that understands this a lot better. The typical people are like, why aren't you all like this? And it's like, because you need us, or you guys are still, trying to figure out how to invent a will and fire.
Yeah.
That's true. You can't solve problems with the same mindset that got you into those problems, right?
Yes.
You need a different viewpoint and a different perspective. And what's interesting is I just gave a speech on, or a talk on, learning to speak divergent. And I just gave it at the basic level, and something that many parents that were in the audience, I gave the spiel about being at a grocery store, and you see a child just throwing a fit at the grocery store. And as a parent, they're thinking, hey, if I was that kid's parents, I'd just go grab them by the arm and I'd take them to the bathroom, because we know the world gets right in the bathroom, right? And I said, how many of you thought that? And it was crazy. Almost 70% of the people in the room immediately thought, take that kid to the bathroom and set them right. And I said, well, have you ever thought that the lights could be creating too much sound? And they said, what? Lights and sound? I said, yeah, lights, they flicker. And many of our kids,
they make a sound.
they make a sound, and they are in tune to this. Or have you ever wore something before that really just scratched your skin, right? And I know with my kids, my girls especially, trying to put them in pantyhose, it sent them through the roof. And so with that, I said that could be another thing. Another thing could be there's just too many people that are too close to them, right? And by scooping them up and taking them to the bathroom, that's not solving the issue. And they were really just shocked, because they never had thought about it they were thinking of it as, here's a disrespectful child or a parent that's not in control of their kids. And so it's funny how people see things out there, Amanda, and so I was trying to teach them to be more curious than assumptive, because that's definitely the first step, I believe, in speaking divergent, for sure.
She had so many dance teachers, because we homeschooled her, because I am so neurodivergent. I can't stand your stupidity. I can only do so much, and she wants to dance.
You forgot they kept losing your child before I was homeschooled and abandoned me on a stage for a magic show while the magic show was happening, and the magician had to babysit me before the cops came and babysat me. That gave me sick.
So she might have, while she was going to a private kindergarten, they went to the state fair, and they realized that they were out of time and needed to get the kids home to do release, but they forgot she was on stage being the magician's assistant, and goodness, left her at the state fair. And she remembers that, because autistic people do not forget.
Yeah.
I think neurotypical people forget more. But with the dance world, it'd be things like, and I've had to explain this to our parents too, because they do not speak tizzies, as she and her generation seem to be calling it now. Pulling a hair back in a bun. And I'm like, if your child does not want their hair back in a bun, it could be physically hurting them, because when you're dealing with a sensory issue, it's a physical pain.
Yeah.
And these parents are like, no, that's not how pulling it back in a bun works.
They don't get it, do they? They just don't get it sometimes. And so trying to figure ways for them to relate it to them as I think is really the key. And so I've tried to tell people, like, many of the clients will tell us, hey, our kids are lazy. And I'm going, they're not lazy. And they'll say, well, they're unmotivated. I said, no, they're typically scared, or they don't even know exactly what they want. And because of that, they're going to stay where they're at, because they're maximizing their capacity, and doing something that they don't know what they're supposed to do is just really causing them anxiety and causing their battery to drain and so forth. And so it's interesting that you bring that up with the parents, obviously in the school, because I can only imagine too, besides pulling the hair back, there's probably different clothes that the girls have to wear, or different outfits.
We're kind of a uniform dance studio, because if I'm not going to put that one in the uniform, I would be a hypocrite to put your child in the uniform. And I've had to tell parents, because I'll catch their kids scratching at their tights, and I know that scratching, that means there's a sensory issue. And the parents are like, well, they can just wear them. And I'm like, no, they cannot.
No, you got to protect the kid, For sure.
And the amount, because they're like, well, they can just get used to it. And I'm like, but they're not.
You can just have a rolling pin in the back of your head when I hit you with it. And that was the concussion.
Let's not go to violence.
What do you mean not go to violence? Have you seen history? Don't tell me not to go to violence and then immediately tell me afterwards, a few weeks later, about history and violence, and then say sometimes violence okay, and then tell me not to do violence. That makes no sense. Am I the only one who keeps the morals?
Lana chose violence.
And the logicalness of that is true, because if you're getting something done to you that is uncomfortable, that's a version of violence, right? And so it makes complete sense that, hey, we want you to experience the same thing we're experiencing. Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Especially when you're young and your frontal lobe has not completely developed. But I've had to, it's not just the parents, it was dance teachers, because like, I can assure you, she does not like her hair going up in a bun. And when it goes up in a bun, it gets really knotted, and she does not like the feel of getting her hair brushed out when it's a huge knot. And the teachers are like, well, she needs to just learn to get over it. And I'm like, she's not paying attention to you if she's dealing with the sensory issues. And they're like, well, this isn't a texture issue with her clothes, so it's not a sensory issue. Mm. And it's like, yeah, sensory issues. But I Googled, and sensory issues are about how clothes feel. But like, if you like the feel of satin, not if you like the feel of a specific type of seam in your outfit.
Well, even we talked about the lights flickering. That's part of the senses. There's, last I checked, there's probably more, but there's at least 5 that I know of that we're all taught in school. And so...
I cannot get the neurotypical parents or her neurotypical dance teachers to understand fluorescent lights make a sound.
They do.
They're like, they don't make a sound. And I'm like, I would love to live in your guys' world because they make an annoying sound.
We could just use that noise of a TV glitching on them and just force them to wear headphones. What's that noise on loop? You know that little noise they use sometimes? We could just put that noise on loop and force them to hear it while they have headphones on.
Okay, so she may have been the last, I hope, generation of old-fashioned ABA. And when she was 3, to try and keep her from eloping from the table, they were physically tying her to the chair in therapy until I found out. She had 5 weeks of ABA before I was like, yeah, this has not changed. She's leaving now.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, I could see why she has some of the philosophies she has. And so for sure that I can understand even more now.
Yeah, and I've tried to explain that to some of our parents, that what your kids are learning in those therapies, you need to know what's going on in therapy, because around here, there's a lot of drop your kid off and pick them up. And I'm like, no, you need to know what's going on in that therapy room, because what's going on in that therapy room is setting a foundation you want to know about later.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the challenge too with that is when we start, and I can't speak for the ABA world. I've never really experienced it. I've partnered with a couple of ABA for older kids that were no longer in ABA. But, you know, when we experience something that's forcing us to do something that's against who we are, you know, that obviously is a version of masking. And what happens is if we start masking too long, we start losing who our true identity and our authenticity is. And when that happens, that's another reason kids get stuck and they get lost, is because they don't even know who they are anymore, because they've been forced by so many directions to try to fit a model. And who's to say that model is even correct? And it's just, it always fascinates me to see different viewpoints on that specific element.
Yeah, but that's, I think, one of the reasons I really enjoy is that identity is so important. You can't build anything without that foundation of the identity. And neurodivergent, I was really excited when she was diagnosed neurodivergent. I will say it was a weight off my shoulder, because I'm like, I don't have to deal with a neurotypical kid. Obviously, I was diagnosed like everyone else we know. They were diagnosed when their kid was diagnosed, and I was the other way around. Her her neurologist was like, hi, she has all the symptoms and you were diagnosed in the 80s. So what makes you think she's typical? And I'm like, well, she acts like me. And they're like, that probably should have been a sign she's not typical.
Case in point.
Yeah. Well,
like,
and I found too that whether you're neurodivergent, whether you're neurotypical, you're going to have challenges and problems.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just how those challenges and problems are processed through is really the big difference. Because many neurodivergents feel like neurotypicals, they all have it easy and they have this easy world. Well, they have challenges just as much as you do. It's just in a different way. And so I think for our just community holistically, I think curiosity and understanding is really the best way to learn from each other to create opportunities for everyone.
I think there's a lot to be said for. I am not anti the neurotypical world. It's just sometimes it's like I don't completely understand why y'all don't understand some of these things, because this is. But I will take your word that the lights do not buzz and that it's easy to look someone in the eye while talking.
Yeah.
But her developmental pediatrician who diagnosed her was giving me a hard time because he was diagnosed way back when in the old days, because his son's slightly older than me, and her developmental pediatrician had been diagnosed as a child, and then his son was diagnosed, and he's like, yeah, I'm with you. If I have a neurotypical grandchild, I don't know what this family's going to do. But I mean, it's just, that's what you know. And I think that's one of the things. Oh yeah, her father, my husband's also neurodivergent. So but I think that's one of the things that I feel bad for a lot of the neurotypical parents trying to raise these kids is we are wired differently. We take things differently. Like, I took a lot of my parents' corrections to my melting down and to me being overstimulated as them not liking me.
Yeah.
And I've tried to tell neurotypical parents that, and they're like, well, they'll grow out to understand it. And I'm like, I'm 44 and logically I understand it. Emotionally, I don't.
It's fascinating. One of the things when we work with parents, and I know this terminology is maybe newer to some parents, but there's a terminology of pathological demand avoidance, or PDA. And usually it's a profile of autism and sometimes with ADHD as well. And essentially it's when any kind of demand is put on that young person that they go into fight, flight, or freeze. And, just the language patterns of how you talk to them can send them over the edge. And many parents don't understand, especially, and I'll take the father role. Many of the fathers are essentially, we grew up in this generation. You do it my way, and if I say jump, you say how high, because that's what we grew up in. And it's very tough when you're trying to demand something from a young person who, once they receive that demand, they immediately go fight, flight, or freeze. So that fighting may not be kind of punching; it might be arguing back and forth. Freezing might be just shutting down completely, and many parents might think that's a form of disrespect. And then, of course, flighting is breaking down, melting down, and getting out of the situation. And parents are going, I don't even know what I did wrong. And so it really comes down to education. And I hope schools will do a better job of educating on the neuro differences that are out there, because I think that would enhance not only future parents, but also our kids that are in school and how they're treated in school as well. There was and I don't remember what school it was, but they had put a system in where they took football players and they paired them up with special ed kids to kind of go hand in hand and be like a big brother. And they said that drove up the respect for the special ed kids, because the football players had a different understanding. They were given a little bit of a different training to better understand, and it increased the confidence on this side, increased the understanding on this side, and it brought everybody closer together. And I just wish more schools or more school systems would adopt that kind of mentality of bringing neurotypicals and neurodivergents together to better understand each other.
It would probably also help if we required special education training for the teachers to understand what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's so tough because of what's coming out, but also what are the state requirements for that state teacher and so forth. And I don't know whether it's better to have state rules or federal rules. I don't know. I just know that I hope from a special ed that the person that's being called to work in that area would self-educate and really get to understand. And that way they could better connect with all their students.
Yeah. And I know PDA, it's newer, but it's been around forever. And I am always careful trying to be, and I will say something to her and then go, never mind, ignore I said it. Because I know I said it in a way that would have made me go, yeah, no, mom, I'm not doing that anymore. Especially when it comes to, hey, have you practiced your tap dance today? It's like, did I say that in a way that made your brain think I was trying to force you into doing it?
Yeah.
But that comes from having experienced it myself. And we'll see parents try to do it at the studio. And I'm like, I've been here. I've done that as myself. Let me tell you what your child just heard. Your child just heard it as a totally different thing than you just said.
Well, I love what y'all are doing with this studio and how you're making it very inclusive, because I think that is incredible. And maybe a thought, and I don't know if this is something you've already done, but holding a workshop at the studio for parents on kind of self-education.
We need our own actual studio because we're subletting from another studio so that I have time. But a few of the parents have asked for that. I'm like, right now I'm barely covering the rent for your kids' classes. We'll get to that.
Sure.
But I've asked a few people going, hi, we need to have workshops because parents don't have the perspective from our side. Most of the perspective they're getting isn't even from the therapist right now. I'm hearing from the studio. It's from the teachers. And I'm like, have you tried talking to your therapist?
Mm-hmm.
I know we've had a few, because I mentioned this, I think last time, I've got dance studio IEPs on every single one of our dancers. So I know exactly what's going on. And parents just write speech delays. And I'm like, hi, don't know if you're aware of this, but speech delays doesn't tell me much. And they're like, well, they're delayed speakers. What did you want to say?
We're at 40 minutes.
She is like, I'm a mini producer over here. We're at 40 minutes. But the parents are like, well, what's the difference between the speech delays? And I'm like,
a good chunk of life.
They are. Like, she had a type of nonverbal and non-expressive where she just did not understand language. We've got other kids that they know the words.
The school that kept losing me lost.
But we've got other kids that they just don't, they understand the words. They don't understand how they go together in grammatical sentences.
Yes.
And the parents are like, you mean you have to deal with these different? I'm like, yes. Did no one explain to you? We've also, a lot of traditional dance studios, they throw everything at you at once and you have to learn all the skills at once. And we have trained our teachers, no, you have to train little steps. We build on, but because of that, we've taken kids who started in like January. We've got a couple a pre-ballet kid who started in January, didn't like jumping, could not hop, couldn't turn, was struggling verbally. She had the words, she just couldn't put them into sentences and did not understand sentences. She is now working on her leap. She can point her leg the exact direction you want her to point her leg.
She can actually do sentences. Sentences.
Well, she's also still a child, so.
I know. I also know the reason why child leashes were invented.
Well, it sounds
we
like...
have a few kids who elope.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, it sounds like an incredible growth is going on. And so...
But that was also why I loved you guys' program, is you guys are building on little steps, and building on little steps goes a lot further than building on big steps.
Oh, absolutely. Because what I heard and what y'all were describing with this young child is essentially you were helping them build confidence along the way. And that confidence will actually carry over into the classroom. It'll carry over into many areas of life. And so, Lita, I just want you to know you may have just changed that child's life for the better. And that's a big deal. So I just want you to think now you're a life changer, not just a tap dancer, you're a life changer, a life transformer.
I'm pretty sure the little kid only cares about the playtime.
Well, but you're using that to the advantage to help them get to where they need to go. And so I want to tell you what you're doing is brilliant, is all I'm going to say.
Yes. And all we have to do now is figure out how to make them realize I have a life.
The younger kids, for a lot of our younger kids, she is the oldest autistic person they have to look up to. And that role model.
Thinking I'm their sibling. I don't know why. I don't know why.
They all want playtime with Lita after class because there's not a lot of autistic role models out there on screen. A lot of these autistic parts are being played by neurotypical people or people we all know are neurodivergent but won't come out and say it.
They keep going for the level 3 and they've been doing level 3, right? Because so how many? Full 3 people still got paid.
That is true.
Also,
Well said.
level 2 and level 1 exist. Just saying. Just saying. Just saying.
Don't think enough people. I mean, you guys understand the different levels that I think we're now doing high support, medium support, and low support. Let's change the names of the levels again.
I know.
Yeah.
Because they used to, you think of level 1 and you also think of level 1 as high functioning in a sense, but it's low support. But then when you put that together, like low support, does that mean they're low functioning? Because people confuse that all the time. And and here's the truth. They can be high support in one area and low support in another area. So how do you group them, right? It's to me, I'm still trying to figure it out because parents, I think doctors are confused because I have parents coming to me. What does it mean when my child is level 1, 4.0? And I go, I've never heard of a level 1, 4.0 before. And then another one will go, what does it mean when they're, and I forgot the terminology they used. And I said, I've never heard of that terminology before. And so it's just fascinating because I think it's so confusing for everybody. And I think trying to bring more clarity around that in itself will make things easier for everybody.
It would. I think the insurance insistence on we've got to have a label on it. It's not helping anyone because it's like you said, high support. I do not do well going to grocery stores. I get overwhelmed by going to grocery stores. Thankfully, my husband does perfectly fine going to grocery stores.
You also forget what we went to the grocery store for all the time.
Now, Lita, that's not
that was like just snacks.
Yeah.
And now I don't know food.
And that's a guy thing, Lita. So, most of the guys will be that way when they go to the grocery store.
Oh, no, that's me doing it. He comes out with the
Oh.
I come out with
He remembers that we need to live.
Oh, that's fantastic.
overwhelmed walking in, so I forget what I went in for, and we come out with just snacks.
Dad.
So it's funny we talk about the grocery stores because I get overwhelmed going to grocery stores if I have to go by myself. And I will literally, my wife will say, hey, why don't you just go grab some cheese? And I'll go to the grocery store. Then all of a sudden I go, there's like 28 different types of cheese. So now I start taking a picture of the items I need. And then I go to the grocery store and I match them up with the pictures. And that has helped tremendously.
I get so overwhelmed that I can have the list with the brand and the size and still walk out the door without.
Okay.
Anything we needed? Anything? I mean, anything? Anything? I mean, hell, I'm surprised we got anything else done. You know what? How are you better at politics and all the politics stuff? And yet, you can't go to a grocery store and remember what we needed and yet in politics you're telling people why did you forget the politics stuff we needed?
Because I'm autistic.
There you go.
It's why you can't live without that army.
But that's the thing on the support needs that I've tried to explain to parents and even with teachers, because when they find out she's autistic in the dance world, there was a lot of pushing her to the side going, you're not worth my time and effort to train because you're not going to be able to learn. And it's like, you can be low support over here, high support over here, and medium support over here.
Mm-hmm. So true.
Well said.
I mean, being in the corner was better than me trying to not but snatch them deadhead did for some reason, comparing zoology stuff to dance stuff, even though A, they don't know zoology, B, they're underestimating animals' abilities to be freaking amazing, and C, this stupid though. It's stupid though. Also, I don't need science in a dance class. I don't need history in a dance class unless it's about dance. It's called dance class, not hello, yes, you're homeschooled, you're not in your house. Let's just do it in the school part anyways, even though this is dance class for dance! Shut up once in a while. Oh, wait, you can't. And why can't I be the one threatening to put a stapler to somebody's mouth?
She had a couple dance teachers who threatened to put staplers to kids' mouths, and being autistic, she took that literally for some reason.
So, if you want your children to shut up, why don't you shut up? Because I think they're getting it from you, person who won't shut the F up. I mean, you sound like a freaking... Oh, no animal on the planet, because at least animals on the planet shut up!
So she may have had some issues in dance classes with dance teachers. Autistic people can get very picky on facts. We're really good at knowing facts.
Mm-hmm.
And
Certainly.
they messed up on facts of zoology. She knows the facts, and they would come out and go, well, I don't see why she doesn't understand that monkeys don't have tails.
Apes don't have its apes! A cucumber. Is he a pickle or a cucumber?
Cucumber. And once you say something stupid, autistic people tend to not trust you on anything else.
Yeah, it's a cardinal sin, especially if it's a subject they're really interested in.
Or that, Veggie tells silly songs with Larry, did, as she pointed out, that if Larry the cucumber knows this, you should know this. And I don't think Larry's a cucumber.
I thought he was pickle.
Same,
I
but
think
different.
sometimes. No, he's a cucumber. I think sometimes that's a problem that teachers have and that parents have with their neurodivergent kids is they're like, wait, so I can't make mistakes. And I'm like, but you've also told them that they can't make mistakes. So if you're holding them to a higher standard than you're holding yourself, trust me, they're going to turn around and hold you to a higher standard.
It's definitely difficult because I've had the experience where when one of my daughters was like 8 years old, we were going to a movie and I thought it started at 5:00. We got there. It actually started at 4:30 and she called me a liar. And because I made a mistake. And I said, wow, let's go talk about this because I want you to know that everybody makes mistakes. Sometimes we just don't have the right facts. So we think we're saying the right thing. And so we had to go through the logical and not the emotional element because many times parents, we go to the emotional, you're called a liar. Well, how dare you? And so, but when we get into the logical brain and we start talking about it logically and showing how the mistake was made and dissecting it, and how we can prevent it from next time, and then giving them permission to do the exact same thing, it really opens up that communication as well.
I think that's where she had the problem with a lot of our dance teachers is they would even come out to me and go things like this. And I'd be like, hi, we have a really great zoo down the road. Do you want to go ask them? Because they're going to laugh at you. And they're like, you're being a jerk to me. And I'm like,
we're at 52 minutes, by the way.
Thanks, kiddo. She's really good at keeping track of the time for this.
Also, not my fault. I'm better at the verbal fight than them. Not my fault. Not my fault. I
won. Because they came up with some really weird things, and I'm sitting there going, there were some questions about my degree, and I'm like, I understand that my degree is weird. Just roll with it, because they're like, theoretical physics isn't a real field of science, right?
I'm sorry, coming from the person who doesn't have a degree in zoology and yet talking about zoology.
Which then made me, as the autistic parent, go, and why am I listening to you again?
Yes, definitely.
But We would love to have you guys back on the program if you don't mind later to talk more, because I know we're hitting the hour mark and you guys have stuff to do probably.
We'd be happy to.
Where can people find you guys on the internet?
Pickens, why don't you take it?
Well, so we've got a couple things going on. I know Blake kind of mentioned before, we have the Autism Independence Academy that we've launched up. You can also find us at Aspire, so that's ASPIE-R.com. And so, those are going to be two amazing places that you can reach us. We're also working on building up our social media presence. And so we'll be sure to send all of that to you as well, so you can include that in descriptions.
We'll have that in the description. We'll have that on the website because we keep mini bios and all the links on the website. So make sure I get both of your mini bios. I think Pickens, yours is on Podmatch, but I'm not sure Blake's is on Podmatch at the moment.
Probably not. It's probably just me, but I can send that to you.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day to come on and talk. We really appreciated it. You want to say bye, or you're like, I'm now all worked up over the animals?
I always wear a verbal fight about sexuality.
Well, it was a pleasure talking to you and learning more about all the challenges that you've had, that you've overcome. And, just knowing, like I said, Lita, is being a life transformer in what you're doing. And that's an incredible gift you're giving to these kids you're working with. So I just want you to know you're giving them a gift.
She's like, this is her imposter syndrome kicking in. She cannot take compliments on this. She's like, I am not good enough. I'm not important.
She did it well. She did very well there. I got the thumbs up.
Imposter syndrome. I don't have imposter syndrome. Only the important people have the imposter syndrome. I don't have imposter syndrome.
Yeah, only important
Amanda,
people
we'd
can
love
have
to be back
syndrome.
and just want to thank you again for having us on.
Thank you so much. And all right, talk to everyone later.
Hello, thank you for watching the Pit Podcast, and please subscribe and also look at the adorable paper. So if you want to subscribe for it, and also please leave a like. And don't forget, if you subscribe to us, stuff you won't miss any of our new podcast stuffies. And also, did you see the adorable paper? Don't you like it?
Not at all. And I just want to tell you, we are just thrilled to be on, and we love Lita and the Pit, and so we're here doing this. So I'm Blake Bowman. I am basically, I guess the way I would describe us is, I don't look at us necessarily as advocates, but more as people who empower people, and especially the neurodiversity mind. And so currently, I am the owner and founder of a couple of companies. One is Aspire Autism Coaching, and it's a play on words, so it's not your typical spelling. And then the second one is a new venture that Pickens and I are doing, and it's called the Autism Independence Academy. And it's something that is really dedicated on helping both parents, teens, and young adults on their independence journey, whatever that may look at. And so that's kind of a little bit about me, I guess, is I am on the spectrum myself. I have 4 neurodivergent, I think Amanda's contagious, neurodivergent children, and they're all young adults now between the ages of 20 and 26, from everything from ADHD and dyslexia to autism and some social anxiety disorders. And so I guess that's a little bit about me. And so Pickens, I'll throw it your way.
Thanks, Blake. So my story, it's a little different. Just like Blake, I have a family that's just full of neurodivergence. And so it's something that I've always been passionate about, throughout my whole life. And my journey started a little different. I was doing a lot of finance, accounting type work, and I really wanted to change. And so that's where Blake really came in at the perfect time. And I've been working with Blake for a couple of years now, and I just absolutely love helping young adults, improve their independent skills. And for me, especially, I love working on things like career as well as things like social skills, because, especially we might find in this conversation, I love talking. It is one of my favorite things. I would talk to a brick wall if it answered back.
Absolutely. One of the things that we've done is we've actually got our coaching process trademarked, and it's called the Ideal Launch System. And so the I stands for identity, Amanda. And what we have found is that when we start working with young adults and teens, essentially Many of them are stuck because they have fear, they've been traumatized, they've been bullied, and they have a low self-esteem about themselves. And so, first part, what we really try to do is we try to establish this new identity with them. And you think of an identity as like a thermostat. If the thermostat is set to 75 degrees, what happens when it gets 77, 78? The air comes on, it cools it back down. Many times, what we're trying to ask our kids to do is to get into jobs or to go to college or do these things. And if their identity doesn't match up, it's like we're putting them in a room with 78 degrees, and then their identity kind of kicks in, lowers it, and it leads to them making mistakes and being more self-critical and actually going backwards. And so the very first thing that we do is we work on that. The second thing is the D stands for direction. And essentially, this is helping them build out like a compelling future, something that excites them. See, many times, Amanda, and I don't know if you've ever fallen into this trap before. I, as a parent, definitely have fallen into this trap. We have an idea of what we want for our kids' future, but we don't stop to ask our kids, what do you want for your future? And their happiness is going to look a lot different. I'll give you an example. My eldest is 26 right now, and his ideal life, he's living it. He has a 9-to-5 job, but he comes home and he gets to play D&D twice a week. And then he chills out doing, gaming on the weekends, and then he goes back and works, and he's living a life where he's self-sustainable and he's just enjoying it. And that's his ideal life. That's not what I would have necessarily picked out for him. Right. And so when we can help them kind of tap into what excites them and the direction they're going, then usually you get them moving. And then once you get them moving, that's where this thing called the E, the executive functioning skills, come in. And for many of us, I call those our adult skills. And essentially, time management, planning, organization, task initiation, task completion. Those are the things that are going to help us. And so what we do is we look to find any gaps in those areas and help put new strategies and tools based on their identity and strengths to get them to execute that. After that, you have the A. A stands for action. You can't accomplish anything without the action. And so we have a unique perspective of looking at micro actions as the key. And so there was a saying, and Pickens, correct me if I'm wrong, was it Warren Buffett who said the eighth wonder of the world is compounding interest?
No worries. All I was going to say, if there's anything that I could really if we're talking about neurotypicals, and if there's anything that I would like to teach the world of, NTs out there, it's that to me, I feel like, neurodiversity, whether it's, autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and others, they're all just natural variations of a human brain. And, I think a lot of people misperceive them as like deficits. But I think really when you get down to the core, it's about seeing those differences as part of any other, normal human diversity, and not something to be like pathologized, because that's where I think it really got, taken the wrong way, especially with what you're talking about back in the day. Many families, I think, watch their children struggle, and it's not because they're incapable. It's that the world doesn't understand their wiring. And when you shift the focus and understand the wiring and understand, with respect and how much, possibility there really is with every individual, no matter what the differences are, I think everything changes. That shift is really kind of the core of the work that we do. But I do truly wish it would be something that, everybody understood and not just perhaps us.